Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in, being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about on the final show of 2022. Yes, first let's talk about that bombshell that came out of Washington with former President Donald Trump where the House has released his tax information for the past 6 years. What was discovered, and we got so much analysis around that. Let's talk about it. Also, I want to talk about this situation in Buffalo, how the Buffalo blizzard may have racial implications. We're going to check in with Lauren Burke to get some insight into this latest data from the Washington Post. Also, later on, let's talk about new evidence and an audio leak in the case of Tory Lanez. Yes, the trial is over, but there might be some new evidence that may sway the court of public opinion. And then later, the big moments of 2022. What did we learn from this past year? I'm not asking just to identify the moments. I'm asking, what did we learn? We'll have that conversation. So stay with us. All of that and a whole lot more in today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, good afternoon and welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, let's talk about the big story out of Washington where former President Donald Trump has had his taxes released by House Democrats. This is something that the House Democrats have been working for the last couple of years, as not just part of tradition to show how the president earns money and where he spends it, but more importantly, to create a semblance of transparency with the American people. Now, the taxes situation has always been one of contention for the former president, as he has tried to file lawsuits to block his taxes being released. But now they have been released and they have been combed through to show us how the president has earned the money, more importantly, how he has invested his money and the implication of everything. So we want to check in with our brother Michael Brown, who is a former finance chair for the DNC, to give us the latest about this whole situation. And considering President Trump is back on the campaign trail for the 2024 election, will this be a way to take the former president off track? All right, let's go to Michael Brown. Michael, thank you so much, brother, for checking in this afternoon. First and foremost, this has been a long time coming for not just House Democrats, but for the Democratic Party. Is the hype to this moment, it doesn't measure up to what has actually been seen in the former president's taxes?
Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, brother.
And your viewers. There's several different pieces related to his taxes of why he has fought so hard for years to keep them secret. When you are when you're an average Joe, you certainly have your right of privacy. But when you decide to run for public office, in particular, in this case, run for president of the United States, there is some tradition and some smaller laws that do say, hey, you need to be transparent. We need to know where you've gotten your money to make sure there are no conflicts of interest, to make sure that to see where your debts are and who holds your debts over your head, to see what kind of leverage a foreign government may have, or even folks here in the United States. But I don't think that's really the issue he cares about the most. What he cares about, and the reason he has fought so hard for years, is he doesn't want people to see that he is not, let me spell that, N-O-T, not a billionaire. Because it's an ego issue for him. As you know, President Biden released 27 years of his taxes because he has nothing to hide. He's not trying to pretend that he's a billionaire. But when you have focused on Forbes magazine's list, and Forbes doesn't do a lot of vetting. Somebody turns in their sheet and says, I'm worth, $5 billion. They believe the person. They don't ask for their tax returns. So that's really his issue, is now, even though the tax return doesn't say, oh, I'm worth X, But you better believe accounting experts can start to put the pieces of the puzzle together and show that if there's X amount of debt only in this 6 years of returns, you better pretty much believe that there aren't billions and billions of dollars sitting in a bank somewhere. And that's what he cares about the most.
So it's more about the public view of his money than anything else.
Correct. And the Ways and Means Committee on the Hill, they do have a legislative interest in this, because what they want to do is make that small law a much larger law, that once you become president while you're campaigning, yes, you need to turn over your taxes for legitimate audits. And as you can tell, if you remember, most of the controversy, or he would say, was he can't turn over his taxes to the public because he was under audit.
Right.
And found out he wasn't under audit. So the question is, did he have someone call over to the IRS commissioner and slow everything down, or just say that he was under audit when he wasn't? Because he was doing whatever it took. Remember, this isn't the most truthful person in the world.
Come on, no, not at all.
He's going to say whatever he's going to say to protect himself.
Right.
And transparency.
Absolutely. I want to share with you just a little bit of what Politico had put out in their report of this story. Folks, take a look at this. When they talked about Trump taxes being released to the public, they said that the 6 years of joint tax returns filed by Trump and his wife, Melania, from 2015 to 2020 number a little over 2,700 pages. They report income from a wide range of golf, restaurant, and ice skating businesses, as well as speaking engagements. The forms also show income Trump generated in a range of foreign countries, including Canada, China, Turkey, the Philippines, the United Arab Emirates, and the Caribbean island of St. Martin, among others. Income from Canada, Ireland, and the United Kingdom figure prominently in gross amounts reported. Trump also reported numerous streams of income from Panama. And here's the headline from Politico: Trump tax returns released, launching fresh scrutiny of his finances. Michael, give us some insight and analysis about how he's getting his money from these different countries and from these different places. Give us, what's the significance of that part of this whole thing?
It's twofold. The first is he probably, and certainly I don't know for sure, I'm not, his accountant, but what he probably was doing was, keep in mind, let me jump ahead, then I'll come back. Keep in mind, he doesn't own a lot of things. He may have licensing agreements with different properties, hotel properties, golf properties. I'm not suggesting he doesn't own any of them, but most of his deals are all licensing agreements. And so Panama, for example, the reason he probably had accounts of where money was coming from Panama was he had a hotel in Panama City. After he started acting a fool when he was president, Panama took the name off the hotel because they didn't want to be associated with him. So that was a stream of income that stopped. So what he would do is, when particular governments or people didn't want his name on buildings, he would then sue them to enforce whatever the contract was. But either way, that income stream stopped.
Right.
And so that's probably why he had something in Panama, United Arab Emirates. He may have had a bank account. Who knows? That's one. Again, I know I mentioned the whole billionaire issue, or lack of being a billionaire.
Yeah.
Other reason he didn't want his taxes out is for people like us and professional accountants to go through them and now start putting the pieces together where his money was coming from. Hence, where the leverage was from people over him. Because
right.
A lot of political pundits always were questioning, why would this government have such sway in the White House? Why did the Russian government have such sway in the White House? Because maybe he had debt to that particular government or business people in that country. Hence, I don't want people to see that.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit, Brother Michael, about the losses that he has taken, the hits he has taken over these past few years, right? This is another piece of the conversation as to why he doesn't want people to know that his billionaire status might not be actually truthful. It's reported in the LA Times and in other spaces that he has actually suffered from losses over these past 6 years, like each year in and year out, he's paying out more, earning less. The LA Times, they put it out there that he has lost millions of dollars year after year. Stephen Rosenthal, who is a senior fellow in the Urban Booking Tax Policy Center, he said that that these newly released records covering 2015 through 2020 add to the picture and supply some important new details about these losses. So if he's lost all of this, again, I'm going back to it because for us, I mean, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I never thought that Trump was a billionaire. I always questioned that. Like, he never seemed to kind of lock in. You know, you don't, when you talk about Warren Buffett, when you talk about Bill Gates and these guys who bring in billion, they don't make no qualms about it. I make a certain amount of money. Elon Musk, I make a certain amount of money. Jeff Bezos, I make a certain amount of money. Trump has always been a question mark for years. This is not like something new. This is Trump been on the scene for 30 years, and he's always had his question mark. So talk up to us about what is the point of understanding that he's actually beginning losses. Does that add to the case of him putting out the big lie to try to raise money around that so he can recoup some of the losses? Is that part of the conversation?
I mean, you got to, you know, if you consider him a hustler and a con. But I think there's also some other evidence that shows that, you know, again, when he started acting a fool, how people didn't want to do business with him anymore. Now, here's a prime example. When he restored the old post office in Washington on Pennsylvania Avenue to make it a Trump hotel, where obviously foreign dignitaries would stay to bring favor with the president. Obviously, many Republican donors stayed there. Not a lot of Democrats would stay there or even eat there. But when he's in office, clearly that was one of the ways to show that you were a team player. But if you are a kind of businessman that he claims he is, and you have, for whatever reason, got that property, and then you sell it, one of your more lucrative properties in your whole portfolio, that's some of the evidence that clearly they were running out of money, they being the Trump organization or the Trump family or whoever you like to equate to that.
Right.
So when you couple that and selling, you know, some of the most prime real estate in America, some would say the world, on, you know, 2 blocks from the White House, a prime location for a hotel, and it's a luxurious hotel, and you sell it, that seems kind of strange. That means that because when people sell assets, that usually means that they need money to fill holes somewhere else. And because of that, it's now you see the losses, the actual losses that he was taking for who knows what businesses he was taking losses on. And he had to fill those holes. Hence, you start selling properties. Now, that property in D.C. on Pennsylvania was his to sell. And I'd mentioned a little earlier that some of his properties are just licensing agreements. It's somebody's property, and he puts his name on it, and they pay him for that.
Right, because of the strength of his brand. And
Right.
That was generally at the time, before all of this, before he got into the White House, his brand was still strong.
It was a luxurious brand. I mean,
yeah.
We can certainly, you may not have to like it, but it was,
Right.
Which to me, editorial comment for a second, I always found strange because his base, I know everybody's so sensitive about his base. His base can't afford a $35 cheeseburger at the Trump Hotel. His base can't even afford any of his properties or his steaks when they were in business or his wines. And it's so interesting to me that they have been so gullible about he's one of us. No, he's not.
Right, far from it.
Hey, you can't even go to his hotel. You can't buy his steaks and wine when they were in business. You can't buy his ties, which were made in China, by the way. And so it's just such an odd dichotomy of who his supporters are and who he caters to.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, when we come forward, we're going to continue the conversation with Michael Brown, former DNC finance chair, about the releasing of former President Donald Trump's taxes, and certainly get your comments on this as well. So stay with us. A lot to cover here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to Michael Brown, former DNC finance chair, about the releasing of former President Donald Trump's taxes, the implications of it, and what does this mean for the president, for the former president moving forward, especially as he's embarking upon another campaign for the White House. Michael, thank you again for being with us this afternoon. I want to talk a little bit about this, and then we're going to take some comments from our online culture crew. But I want to talk about the impact, the web. Okay, so we see all this stuff happening with him as Donald Trump. But again, as in that quote from Politico, his wife is affected. His company, Trump Organization, has already been convicted of fraudulent activities. His children has been brought into this. So given all of this kind of like happening, one, how does this impact his family? And two, are there anything in his taxes that may lead to a criminal investigation? Has he committed fraud or any other type of criminal activity?
Well, first of all, I think we have to also segregate pieces of the family.
Okay.
The Kushners, for example, Kushner and Ivanka, seem to have their own independent wealth, whether it was gained while they were certainly working in the White House, whether it was Kushner's real estate holdings before he was in the White House and after.
Right.
Financing. I think there's some questions there, but they seem to have their own independent flow of income. The sons seem to just be certainly dependent on the Trump Organization. And now, yes, that they've been convicted in New York, it is going to certainly cause some confusion, because now not only do you have that conviction sitting out there, which I'm assuming they will appeal, but now if you're a bank or another business, you're highly unlikely to want to do business with them. You've been convicted of fraud.
Right.
So why would you want to get in bed financially or in a business relationship with them? So the question is, where is the income coming from? Now, they do have, somewhere in the neighborhoods of $200 million, as you mentioned earlier, that they raised to help with the big lie litigations.
Right.
And so he's going to treat that like his own piggy bank until that gets frozen by another. There's so many. The end of your question was any kind of legal exposure. The answer is there's so many different investigations out there for this guy.
Damn.
Some indictments are going to drop, whether the one in Georgia, whether the one in New York, whether federal because of January 6th. There are so many different levels of exposure out there for him. He thinks, for example, that just because he's running for president, there's a shield. There's no shield. He's a regular Joe. And then if he ever even wins the nomination in the Republican side, and then eventually beats Joe Biden, which is again doubtful that he can even achieve those two. But he has the bully pulpit, and he can come out and say, "Witch hunt, hoax. They're just out to get me." He's able to have that kind of microphone to defend himself. But when these federal indictments start to drop, or even the state one in Georgia, he's going to have a whole lot to answer for, and the chickens are coming home to roost. I mean, when you lie for so long, and then sooner or later, when you lose re-election, because keep in mind, if he had won election, then that shield would still exist. But that didn't happen. Right. And when you have Congress that aggressively is going after him, legitimately so, I think these chickens are going to come home to roost for him in several different places around the country.
And I agree with you, brother. I totally agree with you. I think that this is the beginning of the end for him in a lot of different ways. All right, let me go to my online culture crew to get their take on this whole situation. Folks are checking in. Folks got some strong opinions about this situation, Brother Michael. I want to go to Janelle. Janelle, my sister, you kick us off this afternoon. You say, look, it's not about the taxes he has or hasn't paid, because U.S. tax codes have been geared toward the rich since Reagan. Trump docs have always been about the sources of his income. Right. So let's talk about that, because it was reported that in 2020, he did not pay taxes. And then there was, I think it was 2019 or 2018, where he only paid $750 worth of taxes. So his tax payment history is sketchy at best. And that he has learned how to use the loopholes for his advantage. Wouldn't that warrant some arrest? I mean, it got Al Capone.
That's clearly correct. And you better believe now that even though the House is flipping next week from Democratic control to Republican control, that doesn't stop a lot of these investigations, especially on the federal side. That's why Chairman Neal, who's chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee until next week, really wanted to get this out there so different experts or different legal bodies can go through this and see if there's any exposure. Because again, once you can investigate, now that you have the documents in front of you, everything else before this was all speculation. Now it's not speculation. Now you can see when he signed his taxes, that's a federal document. And so if you lie, commit fraud, inflate values of properties, or decrease values of properties for tax purposes, all that is considered fraud, tax fraud in particular. So we just have to wait and see how this continues to churn over the next, year, maybe even two.
Yeah, absolutely. Sharon, you checked in. Sharon Brooks, good to hear from you. You say, look, it's a shell game. Burying your ex-wife on your golf course for tax break. Law and Order music playing in the background. Laughing emojis. It is a shell game. It's a shell game that I think Trump has learned how to master. I never forget, Brother Michael, I was watching this documentary on Netflix about Trump. They talk to past associates, his partners. And I always think it's interesting that they talk to these people after the fact, right? And it's like, where was your consciences? Where was all of this type of moral authority when you were dealing with the dude? Like, Trump is the type of guy, he comes into the room, his reputation precedes him, right? And it's like, there's no way in the world you can go into any type of dealings with a man like Trump and not know something nefarious, backhanded, illegal about how he moves. And then, you deal with him, you get a little game, but then you get caught up in the system. Now you want to come out and act like, yeah, man, he crazy, man. Oh, man, he a criminal. Where was that like when you were dealing with him? And I just see it time and time again. You fall out of good graces with this guy. Now you want to be on the other side. Now you came to this kind of like epiphany of, you know what? He's really not good for this. He's not good for democracy. He's not, man, please. And for me, Michael, I'm just thinking to myself, shed those crocodile tears somewhere else, because you are just as complicit to this, and they're serving as an enabler for this man than any of his base followers.
I mean, you just laid it out perfectly. That's exactly, and he preys on that. He knows what power means. And when he pulls people in close to the power structure, they know they're getting something out of it too. It takes, the level of courageousness of the Republicans during the Richard Nixon administration, because it wasn't Democrats that went to him. It was Republicans that went to Nixon and said, you got to go.
Right. And let me ask you, and on that note, when we got to take our final pause, but let me ask you that. So these taxes come out. The GOP is looking to, and I was reading about this, the GOP is actually looking to try to create some policy where this won't happen again, where taxes may not be examined from either Republicans or whether they're talking about for president or in any other role or any other office. But the GOP is trying to essentially create a policy to accommodate secrecy.
And the good thing is they can't get that done because the Senate is still in Democratic hands. And so if they want to pass a law, they still need the Senate to agree with them.
Right.
And these kind of election denying GOP members on the House side. That's why a lot of GOP members on the Senate side don't like the leadership on the House side, Republicans. They don't like these election deniers. They want to move on and really have a policy message. I'm not suggesting the Senate Republicans are perfect, because they're not.
Right.
And there are a couple election deniers, but they're more prone. They understand. See, they don't have a tight little district that's been gerrymandered that they just have to talk to an echo chamber of people that think like them. Senators have a whole state they need to deal with. And not everyone in these states are all election deniers. And so if they even want their own self-preservation to be reelected, they have to say, you know what, I can't co-sign on that. And that's why you see some comments from GOP senators saying Kevin McCarthy is not going to be able to lead or govern.
Right. And that's why we know that the unwritten policy of the GOP is, if you don't agree with us, we'll just throw your ass under the bus. Right. We'll throw you under the bus, sir, because I'm not falling out of power because of your madness. Michael Brown, former DNC finance chair, I appreciate you, brother, for checking in with us this afternoon, giving us some analysis on this issue. Thank you so much, brother. Look forward to reconnecting with you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's check in and talk about Buffalo, how the Buffalo Blizzard has now opened the conversation to racial implications. We're going to check in with Lauren Burke to give us some insight about this new data. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, which is shocking.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now
We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, let's switch gears now to have a conversation about the Buffalo blizzard. Now, earlier this week, we reported that the blizzard dropped a whopping 50 inches of snow on the upstate New York City, and it has caused many people to question about city preparedness for weather disasters such as this. And we also reported yesterday when a young woman by the age of 22 years old, Annadale Taylor, she had unfortunately froze to death in her car when she was returning home from a shift at a Buffalo hospital, and how she was not able to make it home because of the blizzard conditions there in the city. And as a result of that, it has brought a lot of attention to how Buffalo has handled this snowstorm, particularly in Black communities of the city. Now, there's been a new report that was just released, folks, from the Washington Post that said that, and I would take a look at this here. Here are the numbers, and then we're going to check in with Lauren Burke to give us some more insight. But take a look. According to the Washington Post, while Black people make up 14% of the population in Erie County and 33% in Buffalo, they account for 51% of the storm's deceased. Residents and area leaders indicated that structural problems, including poverty, food deserts, subpar housing, and a lack of government investment, have worsened the snowstorm's impacts on working class Black and brown communities as the cost to the city has become more apparent. Those neighborhoods surrounding more affluent and whiter suburbs appear to be more prepared to respond to the historic snowstorm, even having their power restored faster and roads plowed quicker. Wow. Now take a look. It says this area is so heavily impacted by these systemic issues, and it's largely because of poverty, said Pastor Al Robinson, according to the Post. And impoverished people happen to be people of color. He has hardly slept since last Thursday, as he and his wife Vivian have provided care and shelter for 130 people in his church since the blizzard's onslaught. Now, we also take a look at just some of these the photos here, but the blizzard fuels racial and class divides in polarized cities. Let me tell you, man, oh man, we cannot get out of the space of talking about race in this country, even down to the weather. Folks, I'm so happy to be joined by writer and analyst Lauren Burke to give us some insight as to what does this all mean, and how will the city of Buffalo and other cities that may potentially be hit with weather disasters, how will this impact policy and how cities handle things moving forward? Lauren, thank you so much for being with us. It's good to reconnect with you. It's been a while.
Yeah, Farajii, I've been watching you though. Great show, man. It's great to see you. Great to be talking to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Lauren, what do you make of this? Like, I mean, it's one thing to already have, and again, we're going back to the story of the young sister, 22 years old.
Right.
Unfortunate situation. But now it's like, even in a weather disaster, race and politics still play a part. And now they're saying that, according to the Post, of this whole snowstorm, that these white areas, they got better responses from the city. Snow was plowed. Like, how do we handle something like this? Now we got, along with all the other issues, if it rains too hard, if it snows too hard, we might still be hit with another challenge just simply because we're Black.
Absolutely. Well, as you know, Farajii, Black people sort of over-index for poverty in this country, 28%. You also know, of course, too, that money is what drives politics. Money is what makes politicians do X, Y, and Z and pay attention to certain constituencies. You see it all the time, just in general terms, where certain issues come up in front of Congress or in front of local governments because money is paid into that issue by certain groups. Now, you wouldn't think you'd have to think about that for a snowstorm, right? But the reality of it is that the way we treat poor people in the United States is certainly not the way we treat rich people in the United States, whether it's Buffalo or any place else. We see it with just basic infrastructure issues, particularly in the South. Notably, President Biden did a very good job at getting a lot of money out through the American Rescues Plan for infrastructure. A lot of these local governments just don't give it to poor communities or Black communities. But when it comes to a natural disaster, that really goes back to local government and really the governor of New York State. Quite frankly, I think Kathy Hochul was not well prepared for this. She is a fairly new governor, given what happened sort of unexpectedly coming into office as lieutenant governor after the crisis that hit Andrew Cuomo. But if you remember, Andrew Cuomo, when there was a crisis, tended to, particularly a weather-related crisis, he would typically get the National Guard out, which is what typical protocol is for a major snowstorm in New York. And as somebody who's a New Yorker, I can remember growing up as a teenager, and we had 5-6 feet of snow on Long Island. I can remember in the 90s some major snowstorm, and it wasn't uncommon the National Guard would be a part of that. You'll notice the National Guard was not called out for this disaster. And it is not really, there's no real excuse for this, because, this is not the 1800s or the early 1900s where we don't have the technology to know that there's going to be a big snowstorm. We know that climate change is real. We've seen these extreme weather incidents down the country becoming more and more prevalent. So I think Hochul made a big mistake, frankly, underestimating this storm. I know a lot of people putting stuff on the Mayor Brown, and I'm not saying that he should not be part of the blame. He should be part of the blame, but he does not have the power to execute some of the assistance that the governor has.
Yeah.
And so, my mother worked in New York State government once upon a time, and so did I. And I know what that looks like, and it doesn't look like what we saw last week. And there was just no excuse for people freezing to death and finding bodies outside and women, freezing to death in their car. And there was a baby that froze to death. This is not the type of stuff you should be hearing in the year 2022.
But and my question is, Lauren, even with that level of history and preparedness, there was a lot of snow. That was, and I could be wrong in my reports. I reported 50 inches. And I'm like, I don't know what city would be prepared for such a major blizzard in such a short period of time. This wasn't like over a week's period. This was pretty much like a weekend that this blizzard hit the city of Buffalo. What could a city do to prepare for something, for a hit that hard?
Well, I think that the idea that, we didn't know it was coming, it was a big surprise. I don't buy into that a whole lot.
No, me neither.
Buffalo is a place where snow happens a lot. My grandmother used to live in Albany once upon a time, and big weather events up in that part of New York, particularly in the part we're talking about in Buffalo, it's just not that big of a surprise. Now, I'm not saying that a governor or a mayor can predict exactly what the snowfall is going to be, but certainly the local weather meteorologists were certainly ringing the bell pretty hard. And, this is one of the reasons why, and I know in our part of the country where we kind of get these weather emergencies. If you're in Northern Virginia or Washington, D.C., a lot of times we'll get an emergency and absolutely nothing will happen. But you'll notice that the media does tend to overplay it. I would say that it's better certainly to overplay something and be wrong than to underplay it and be wrong. But in a place like Buffalo, overplaying it should have been almost like the default setting, because they have gotten major snow just as a general rule. So I think that, when you're an elected official, you're responsible for these things, and it's no joke. And, we've seen what it looks like when elected officials do well and alert the public way ahead of time and really, really get loud and ring the bell, do all sorts of stuff, put out states of emergency. And I don't know that we saw any of that. I can't speak in grave detail because I don't live in Buffalo, so I don't know exactly what they were doing. But there are some things certainly the governor did not do that I think are fair things to bring up.
Has there been any talk, Lauren, or any type of response from the city about this situation of people being people found frozen in different areas of the city, in the cars, the baby. How has the city responded to these?
Well, they're still, I think, in the dazed and confused stages of this crisis. I just think that they're still, getting over the fact that this whole thing happened and that, frankly, they weren't prepared. And, as time goes by from the crisis and you look at these numbers building, I think it was 39 dead or 40 dead. And of course, half of those people are Black. There's going to have to be some sort of obvious after action report and some sort of obvious after action conversation about why this happened, because that absolutely should not be happening with the level of technology that we have, not just around meteorology, but the ability that we have in our society now to communicate to a large group of people in a short period of time is a hell of a lot better than it was in the 1980s and 90s. So I think they're still in the dazed and confused stage of figuring out, how this happened, but they got to get out of the dazed and confused because, winter is not over. And certainly in Buffalo, it wouldn't surprise me if they had another event before the winter season is over.
Wow. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation with Lauren Burke, and let's continue the conversation with you folks. We're going to get your comments as we talk about the Buffalo blizzard and how it highlights racial and class differences. Stay with us. A lot more to conversation right here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Folks, we have been having a conversation about the Buffalo blizzard and how it has highlighted racial and class divides in the city of Buffalo. We've been checking in with Lauren Burke, who is of Black Press USA and of the host of the Burke Files, and having this conversation with Lauren about what the implications are for this blizzard as we look forward. But the Black folks and Black residents of the city of Buffalo are suffering now as a result of this blizzard. And I can only say our hearts and prayers go out to them as they are trying to figure out how the city is going to help them out the situation. Let me go to Lauren. I want to bring you back into the frame, but let's go to our online culture crew to hear what folks got to say, because now there's just this ongoing sense of frustration. And unfortunately, you brought this up. Like whenever there seems to be a weather event or some sort of natural disaster, Black folks are at the brunt of it. We taking a hit for it, Lauren. And right. And I don't know about you. It's so overwhelming and yet tiring to see this type of disparity with, a natural situation, something that you would think would quote unquote unite people to come together and say, you know what, we need to help one another. We need to make sure everyone is good. But now it just seems like everything that comes down the pipe, whether it's from God or from man, it's just like we take the hit for it. And I'm not sure how to really manage that emotionally, mentally, because racism is so, it runs so deep in this country. Biases run so deep in this country. It's literally killing us.
Well, right. And poverty is what is behind a lot of that. That we in this country, we treat poor people differently. It's just a fact. If you go to any city, you see it. It is, we really don't care about poor people. We don't care about people who don't have money. It's pretty heartening, actually, to see Karen Bass, new mayor of LA, start out with an emergency on the homeless, because that's something that is a huge issue here. But to go back to Buffalo, it's, what poverty does is it places a lot of barriers in front of people just to have to live their day-to-day lives. The food desert issue, a lot of these people seem to be caught out there because they were trying to get food, or they were coming back from food, or something related to that. But also, too, that the governments are sort of able to get away with treating poor people like this without any real political penalty. That's a huge problem and a huge issue here.
Absolutely. Let me go to my crew, because folks are checking in. All right, let me go to Conscious Thoughts. You said the entire apparatus broke down, Conscious Thought, relative to the storm and the response of local and state governments to it. The entire apparatus. I remember this is so reminiscent, Lauren, of Hurricane Katrina.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's a perfect example of how you would never have seen that had that been white folks out there struggling to do whatever. That's exactly right. It's exactly right.
I just can't believe we're back at this. And the sad part about it, and you said it, the season is not even over yet. So there could be another weather event that can hit harder. That was reading in the report as well. The city is still trying to recover from another weather event that happened last month. Now people are complaining that since the snow has melted, they got to deal with the issue of flooding because of warmer weather is expected. So the issue of flooding is coming up in a lot of these homes that Black folks reside in. And so the city may say, well, kind of throw their shoulders up on the situation. And it's like, again, we're always taking a hit. Janae, you checked in and said it's also called wear and tear, which is why we need an infrastructure bill each census or decade. You can say Buffalo is used to have 80 plus inches, then say we'll wait till after we exceed that amount.
That's right.
And so is that the place that we need to, like, the infrastructure bill? Like, do states need to really look at a separate infrastructure bill?
Well,
outside of the federal government's bill?
I think that what is there, a lot of this is directing assistance to the right people who need it more. It's always interesting to hear things like, the wealthier parts of the city got more help. Yeah, of course they did. But did the wealthier parts of the city need more help? A snowplow can go down somebody's street if they're rich or poor, But yet I actually think that there isn't any extra money that needed to happen. It's somebody standing someplace making a decision to send assistance to a specific neighborhood or not. And what a lot of times that's based on, frankly, is just somebody's personal whatever in their head about who's important and who isn't. So at some point that has to be looked into. I think the other mistake that they made too, I think they sent out an advisory that, they were going to have, excessive wind and some snow, etc. And of course, there's a big difference between sending out an advisory and sending out a mandatory stay-at-home order. That puts people in sort of the right mindset of, okay, this is a big crisis. This is something that we got to stop what we're doing in our lives and deal with. But when you're somebody who doesn't make a lot of money and you need to be at work,
that's the
you're
other.
going to have a different view of that, of somebody asking you to stay home. Of course, we saw this during COVID.
Right.
People were trying to work anyway when we have this deadly pandemic. Fortunately, the term of Donald Trump ended and the term of Joe Biden started, and he really targeted some assistance to that particular mindset and that particular issue of the average middle class or lower middle class person making a decision to work and risk their lives doing so. And I actually think the same thing happened with this situation in Buffalo.
And I'm glad you brought that up. We got a few seconds left, but I'm glad you brought that up because I'm thinking about Andell Taylor, 22, coming home from work. Even though she's working in a hospital, do you think that this tragedy will open the door for us to have some different conversations about non-essential and essential workers, especially for hospitals? I mean, yes, we praised the hospital workers during COVID, and then we also kind of like demonized them at the same time. And then now in this situation, you're still bringing people into a space where they feel compelled to go to work. So is this going to change how we work, especially in areas that are more prone to weather events like this?
Probably not. It probably won't change the conversation about essential and non-essential because, of course, a hospital worker or a nurse is going to be deemed essential almost every time. And as somebody who knows a bunch of cops, they're always essential no matter what the heck is going on. They got to go in and they got to go to work and risk whatever they have to risk to go to work. I do think that if we're going to call people essential, particularly nurses, then we have to pay them an essential salary that reflects how essential they are. We certainly do that with police. And there's no reason we can't do it with nurses who are underpaid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also, I know that some employers actually send out a shuttle. They might have it's hard for me to believe that a hospital making millions and millions of dollars can't invest in some Hummers or some other piece, transportation to bring people in, to bring people in so that way this won't be an issue. Lauren, I truly appreciate you for giving us an analysis of this whole situation and how, we should look at it. Again, we're taking so many hits this year, and I hope and pray that come next year that we're going to start to see some changes.
Yeah, me too. And it's great seeing you, Farajii. You're doing a great job. And I'll be watching you. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot.
So
Absolutely.
a lot.
Thank you. Lauren Burke checking in from Black Press USA and host of the Burke Files. Folks, we got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's talk about the trial of Tory Lanez that seems to continue to happen in the court of public opinion. We're going to check in with civil rights attorney Christina Sears to get her take about the new audio that was just released that may be more damning than the evidence that was presented in court. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told. Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape. with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Goodmartin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. This is officially the last show of The Culture for the year of 2022. And I have to say, what a year it has truly, truly been. All right, folks, we're going to continue the conversation as we talk about this trial that continues to take place, even though the verdict has already been rendered. And I'm talking about the trial of hip-hop artist Tory Lanez and the situation about his possession of a firearm and that involved hip-hop superstar Megan Thee Stallion, and how this trial has opened up the conversation for so many things, from misogyny to protecting Black women and so much more. Here to give us some insight about a new piece of audio that was just released even after the trial ended, that audio that shows that Tory Lanez has been very, very apologetic, as he called in and talked about the situation that happened back in June of 2020. He was very, very apologetic about his actions, his behavior, the fact that he said that in the course of these audio tapes that he was drunk and he just made some dumb choices and using and having that firearm on his possession. And so it brings a lot of people to question whether the trial was either necessary or, and more importantly, the demonization of Megan Thee Stallion was even appropriate. Here to talk to us about this is civil rights attorney Christina Sears. Christina, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. You're welcome. I'm wondering, because I heard this audio. Tory on this audio does not sound belligerent. He does not sound obnoxious. He doesn't even sound like he's like, oh, you're going to have to prove it. He's talking to Megan Thee Stallion's people. I think it's like her manager or one of her people in her team. And he's like every call, and there I think about 3 or 4 calls, every call, hey, I just want to say I apologize again. How can we make this right? How can I do right? I just need to get out of this situation. So for the trial, I'm gonna say the after trial. That's his thing. Like, now, what does this do? First and foremost, how do you handle this? Why wasn't this audio included in the trial that was just completed? Why is it just being released now?
It's my understanding that the prosecutors played this particular jail call that you're referencing during the trial, and that it was quite impactful after all of the testimony that had been given on the subject of who shot Megan. If you listen to the audio very carefully, you'll see that he never specifically says a shooting or that or references a gun. He talks about how apologetic he is and accepts responsibility for what occurred, almost as if he is aware that he's being recorded, but wants to communicate his true feelings about the events that have just taken place. It's all very, it seems as though he went through some sobering events because he acknowledges being intoxicated when the event took place. And there's nothing like being arrested and being held in custody and finally being able to contact the outside world and maybe someone you feel comfortable speaking with and trying to, I guess, return to some semblance of normalcy and express the guilt that is weighing heavy on a person after an event like that takes place. So this was powerful evidence, I think, during the trial. And I believe that we are hearing it now because it is a part of the public record and accessible. And although most of the time, especially in today's culture with high profile parties in a case, we get to go inside the courtroom with video. But in this case, that didn't take place. So we have to wait till afterwards to hear some of the audio evidence, such as this jail call that came out.
So a couple of things come to my mind, Christina. One is, since this was played during the trial, this really gives us some insight as to what the jury heard and why that verdict was rendered, that he was found guilty. Because, I mean, he didn't say it himself, but he damn sure sounded like he wanted to say, I'm guilty. I did this, right?
He said enough.
Yeah, and that's exactly, he said enough. What weight does this put on that conversation about, for those who are quote unquote Team Tory, you know, and saying, well, this is a miscarriage of justice. His father has said it. And it's interesting because his father has been so vocal in saying, no, this is not right. But your own son is on the phone, sir.
And apologetic.
And being apologetic. So what are you talking about? Where's the miscarriage of justice here?
I think that supporters of Tory Lanez and his father included are going to hear what they want to hear during a trial, after a trial, regardless of the recording. I think that this evidence is going to be sobering for a lot of his fans as well, who still supported him, not having heard this audio. But there's a lot to disregard or downplay once you hear this kind of video. But I think a parent like Tory Lanez's father is going to always believe the best in their child, regardless of what it is that they've been accused of or convicted of, or even what's on the audio. And I also think that we have to take into account that when audio like this is played in a trial, that the focus is on allowing the jury to hear it. So the jury may have had a much better ability to hear what was said on the tape. They also would have been provided with an opportunity to hear it again if they had requested it. I'm not certain as to what type of audio was available in the courtroom for the people seated in the galley, which is where his father would have been seated. He might not have heard the specifics in that seating position like we're hearing at home. And I think that the prosecutors have to focus on the fact finder, the jury, and making sure that they hear it. And that's really their only concern. As far as the fans at home, I'm a comment section reader, and I have.
So am I, Christina. So am I.
Since this audio came out, I've looked at the comments, and there has been a change in the tone and tenor of supporters. They're fewer in number, not necessarily people who are admitting that their minds have been changed or swayed by this new information, but there are a lot fewer supporters in the comment section than there were a couple of days ago. So I think this evidence is sinking in for some people, but again, there's some people who are just, it doesn't matter what the evidence is.
I was about to say that, Christina. I was like, some people are gonna, I mean, you know, some people say, oh no, he didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, I mean, you work in the area of, you're a veteran prosecutor, you're an attorney. You work in the area of civil rights. I want to kind of get your take on the conversation about the demonization of Megan Thee Stallion, because people really didn't, you know, we had to be clear even in this reporting that this was not a trial against Megan. this was a trial about Tory Lanez and what he did, the possession of the firearm.
Sure.
But people have made the narrative around this trial about Megan Thee Stallion. She has taken some hits. And in some cases, she has said one thing in one interview, saying a conflicting message in a separate interview. Help us to understand, like, the whole concept of this misogyny that people are saying, and that, you know, even in the petition around supporting Tory, they say, oh, this fake black woman protectionism of Megan Thee Stallion. How does this play out in a case like this?
So it specifically in a case like this, where you have high profile individuals, they tend to be normalized. They get put into a scenario that sometimes everyday people who don't have a fame and a following behind them find themselves in, because they're victims of violence. And they end up contacting the police. They end up going on trial, and they end up being persecuted for accusing someone of committing an offense. I hate to say it, but this is par for the course. I've seen it more times than I can count. Any time you have someone making accusations of criminal behavior against another, I think our sensitivities, just as human beings, we don't want to believe that violence occurs. And we certainly don't want to believe that violence occurs amongst people that we are distantly familiar with, like celebrities. And so it's hard, it's difficult for people to disconnect from the from what they think occurs in Meg Thee Stallion's life and what they think occurs in Tory Lanez's life every day, and to kind of inject into it this toxicity, this violence, and view them in a totally different light. It's hard for people to grasp that they are ordinary people and wrap their minds around the fact that they too can suffer from misogyny, from violence, from handgun crimes, from being in the wrong place at the wrong time, where alcohol is obviously prevalent, and then handguns are introduced into the situation. It's difficult for people to accept.
And you just made this point that, you know, these are high profile individuals, and I've seen some folks in my comment section as we do the show. They're like, well, why, Farajii, do you even need to talk about this? Because we spent a couple of days talking about this. I think well, this show is for culture, so this is one of the top stories of 2022 in the hip hop world, right? But then two, I think that there is something that we can all kind of glean from this situation, dealing with like the situation, the issue of misogyny, domestic violence, black men, and you know, the whole gun possession. But why do you think that we should have a conversation about this, even though this is from this only is occurring to two people, mostly two, who seems to be worlds apart from the quote unquote the regular folks? Why should we even be talking about this?
I think we should talk about this because it will curb violence in the future. And it will encourage people who are victimized to come forward and talk to the police about things that are that have occurred to them, or ongoing continuing violence against them in their home. Despite how hard it is and how much they'll be victimized again through a trial process, it very well might save many lives. So it's important for us to keep talking about the issue of misogyny, and keep talking about the issues of gun violence, and to move those issues to the forefront every opportunity that we get, so that people are encouraged to change their behavior and to report the behavior when it occurs to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we got to take a quick pause in a few moments, but one of our loyal watchers, Lana, checked in and said, this trial will impact Black future law decisions. Social media influence matters more than it should. This was a trial. This was like a social media trial.
It was.
Now, we know a lot of trials have kind of taken place on social media. I mean, we look at R. Kelly, we look at Bill Cosby, we look at some of these bigger trials that have hit the culture in social media. But do you think that this will impact future Black law decisions? Does social media played such an important role in law now that like attorneys and prosecutors like yourself are, you go to these spaces to take a look what the sentiment is?
I do. I read the comment section. I read the comment section of this particular case leading up to the trial. And I watched it during the trial just to see how the sentiment changed, because it helps me understand how jurors think and things that they need explained to them in a trial. Questions that are raised in the comment section that are answered by other people in the comment section. Sometimes, oftentimes incorrectly, sometimes correctly. But I think what's most important is that media keeps talking about these events, these trials, these issues in our community, because we need to be shaping the conversation that occurs on social media. We need to be having more impact, more positive impact with hashtags like support Black women and believe women. And then we can see the change in the culture based on that push, sort of a top-down approach, influencing the culture to disregard past behavior and cultural ideology, like women are not to be believed, and that violence is a part of relationships, and that you shouldn't call the police when you're a victim of a crime. We have to change that narrative if we want to advance as a people, as a community.
Absolutely. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue the conversation with veteran attorney and prosecutor Christina Sears. We'll get your comments from you as the online culture crew, and so much more. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to veteran attorney and prosecutor Christina Sears as we talk about some of the new the audio that was leaked during the trial of Tory Lanez, hip-hop singer and rapper Tory Lanez, and audio that showed that he was very, very apologetic about what happened 2 years ago with the shooting between him and Megan Thee Stallion and others in that vehicle that night after they came home from a party. And he was apologetic in his audio. He sounded like he came to a moment of reflection in that audio. And this was audio that was presented during the trial, where it was determined that he was found guilty of a number of felony charges. Now he's expected to be sentenced in January, and there's even the talk of him possibly being deported back to his home country of Canada as a result of these actions. We've been checking in with Christina, getting her thoughts, and I would love to get your thoughts as well. So make sure you post your comments in our chat section as we're streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. Christina, I want to just share just a little bit of what folks are saying in our comment section, so you can see where people's heads are. Lana checked in and said a community with normalized violence and pain with famous people equal no good end. And I think that's the other part about this. I mean, you spoke earlier about the culture of not just domestic violence, but just violence in general, that this continues to be a problem. And I think going back to that point that you were making about why it's important to have these conversations, there are a lot of young people in their 20s, and I'm not talking teens, I'm talking about in their 20s and early 30s, right, who look at these artists, who try to mimic the lifestyle of these artists, who try to make the same decisions as these artists, who try to show up as these artists. And even though whether they want to admit it or not, highly influenced by how these artists move and how they live their lives, that they're looking at a situation like this and they might start to think it's okay to be one way or another, which is why I do think that we need to keep in mind that the culture is full of young people, not just older conscious folks. It's full of young people who in their 20s who would probably make the same decision. I mean, I've seen people, and I remember when the situation happened, and even now, I've seen people make fun of a situation like this. And I said this on the show a couple of days ago, Christina. If you're shooting in the back seat of a vehicle, the close proximity of the actual vehicle, and you're shooting, the gun is going off, you really could have killed somebody.
Very
this
easily.
situation could have gone from bad to fatal in like 0.3 seconds.
Very easily. Very easily. That's too
So it's
combined.
like we can try to make fun of it. We can, say, oh, Megan is lying. Oh, it was just a toe shot. I saw another artist, Kodak Black, say, well, you just got shot in the foot. What's the problem? Like, you're supposed to be from the street. And it's like, bro, at the end of the day, she got shot in the foot in the back of a truck. Like, she could have got shot in the chest. She could have got shot in the head. We don't know how the bullets could have ricocheted off of somebody or something. Like, it could have been a very, very traumatic situation. So I think it's important that we even have to be more mindful about how we are looking at situations like this, because I'm starting to see, and I'm sure you're seeing it, that some of the most violent things that are happening in our community becomes fodder for social media.
It's very true. I think we need to be appalled that she was shot at all.
Right.
And celebratory that her injury wasn't much more serious or fatal, and that she has recovered physically from it. But the trauma that comes along with being a victim of a violent crime is one that she will carry with her for the rest of her life. It's something that she will always be recovering from.
Even though, and let me just jump in real quick, Christine, and say, even though she caused people to question her own credibility, the reality is she was still very traumatized.
Very, very, very much so traumatized. And I think the trauma also is evidenced and compounded by the fact that she tried to cover up what he did and felt some responsibility for his well-being, despite the fact that he had victimized her. I think that's part and parcel. That's evidence right there of prior trauma or influence, cultural influence that she obviously that had some impact on her when she found herself in a situation I'm sure she didn't expect to be in. I think she probably believed that she'd reached a level of notoriety and stability where she wouldn't be confronted in a situation with someone who was equally accomplished or similarly accomplished, who had a lot to lose in this situation. I'm sure this caught her off guard.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. The other part of this, and I thought this was interesting, and I think this is part of the reason why I think, I see a lot of Black women in particular say you shouldn't have press charges and kind of move forward with this process, because her sexual history was put out there on Front Street during the course of this situation, right? At first, it was questioned whether her and how close was she with Tory. Then she admitted to herself that she did have intimate relations with her. And then, that kind of created this this effect where guys started popping up, the baby. Then Drake started saying something, and this person started saying something. Yes. And now this woman's sexual history is put out there on Front Street in a very, very unhealthy and again, traumatizing way. And I couldn't help but just to feel for the sister, because I was like, damn, man, again, it was fodder for the social media. And it just broke my heart, because I'm like, we are so quick to make judgments about people as if we don't make mistakes, as if we don't make certain choices in our life. And she's a grown woman. She can do what she chooses to do. But it was just it was just really disrespectful that she had to be put out there the way she did, just in terms of her sexual history. And I'm wondering, as a civil rights attorney, how much do you allow that person, if you're defending someone or even if you're prosecuting someone, how far do you go to try to create this narrative about this person as it relates to a case?
You would be hard pressed to find a criminal case where the victim's sexual history or sex life at all is relevant in any way. I think that the prosecution probably tempered their allowing the defense to enter this information into evidence in a way that helped them to show to the jury that everything that the defense attempted to do in this situation was distract them from the obvious evidence that Tory Lanez shot Meg Thee Stallion. Her sexual history didn't have anything to do with him picking up a gun. Nope. Didn't justify him picking up a gun or shooting at her. So the fact that it came in at all is just that, a distraction point. And if I were defending someone, I would be cautious in that regard, because if the prosecution is allowing you to enter this evidence, then they're obviously going to talk to the jury at some point in closing argument about how you have attempted to distract from the ultimate issue, which is whether or not Tory Lanez shot her. Right. Who she had sex with could not be less relevant in that.
Absolutely. Regard. I get it. We got a couple of moments left, Christina, so I'm so grateful for your time. So what happens next with Tory? He's scheduled to be sentenced next month. They're saying that he's looking at, I've seen so many different numbers out there in terms of 13, I think I saw 20 years. I saw that he could be deported back to Canada. What's the likelihood? What punishment is likely to take place here?
So the sentencing range, the high end of the sentencing range in this case is 22 years. One of the offenses that he's charged with it involved the handgun, obviously. And so that has some sentencing enhancement capabilities. The next phase is going to be sentencing, and it's going to be another trial, essentially. the prosecution is going to make its case for whatever sentence it is that they're requesting from the court. You can expect their request to be on the higher end, if not the maximum end of that 22-year span of time. And then you can expect the defense to also put up evidence and testimony to mitigate what the defendant has been found guilty of, all the evidence that the court has heard, to maybe answer some questions, some looming questions that the court may have about why the defendant committed these offenses without disturbing any appellate rights that Mr. Peterson has. So I think every time one of these trials occurs, whether it's televised or we hear about it from trial correspondents, I think it serves to educate the populace about justice in America, about criminal justice, about things that we need to improve upon in our society. And I think that although this is an unfortunate event, I think the good that comes out about it is that people need to know more about our justice system, and in order to prevent future injustices, in order to encourage and change the sentiment about people serving on juries. I think that's something that I hope that people take away from each one of these trials that are televised or that we hear about that involve popular figures in our culture. So,
do you think he will be deported back to Canada?
It is likely, given that it's a gun crime and that it is, someone actually got shot. I think it is likely that he would be deported. But these things, they can take many twists and turns. So I think we need to watch the sentencing phase and see what evidence comes out and see what decisions the judge makes. I think it won't be the judge's decision about whether or not he gets deported. That would be an U.S. immigration court would decide whether or not he gets deported and decide his ability to stay in America. So that won't happen at the sentencing phase. It will likely happen sometime after his sentencing.
Well, it's a tragedy all around. So many lives have been impacted by this. And it highlights where we are as a people, as part of the hip hop community. We still got a lot of growing to do. We got a lot of growing to do, Christina, and a lot of responsibility to take, to use as we take actions. And it's just really, really sad. It's really, really unfortunate. And I hope Tory and Megan can find some level of healing and recovery from this situation, because I think that this trial and just this whole scenario opened up the door for so many things and exposed how much we need to cover, how much more we need to work on to find healing between the sexes and to find healing within ourselves. So I appreciate you for sharing your legal insight as well as your cultural insight on this topic. Thank you, Christine. We love to reconnect with you in the new year.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about some of the big moments of 2022. More importantly, I'm asking the question, what did you learn from this past year? We'll have that conversation and more. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We got a final few moments here on The Culture as we close out our final show for 2022. And I just wanted to take the time to connect with all of you, my online culture crew, as we look at this past year and just ask ourselves, what did you learn? What did we learn from this past year? And I want you to share your comments, throw them in the chat on YouTube, Facebook, Black Star Network, and share what were some of the big lessons that you learned from 2022, not just talking about the big stories, the big events, but more importantly, what did you learn from 2022? This is, this is a very, very different space that we find ourselves in this country, whether you're talking about politically, socially, economically, or even culturally. And one of the things that I try to keep in mind is that, each year, you only hope and pray that, things get better for you in your personal life. But it seems to me that we are at a place where we should also hope and pray that things get better in our collective lives, in the community, whether you're talking about the hip hop community, or whether you're talking about Black folks in this country, whether you're talking about the whole country, that there is great disturbance among us right now. There is an upheaval. There is a sentiment of anxiety. There's a growing sentiment of frustration, and there's the struggle and pain that we have been all trying to either escape from or trying to deal with. And so I think for me personally, one of the big things that I'm looking to do next year and to really work on is to be a peacemaker. How do we broker peace in a time where there seems to be so much uncertainty, some levels of chaos and confusion? How do you broker peace during this time? And this is something that I've seen because we're going to be, and I hope this isn't true, but the way things are looking, we're going into another year with a lot of unfinished business, a lot of untied not. It's a lot of things that have left to be done. And unless we get into a space where we're saying enough is enough, we're going to continue to kind of go through 2023, God willing, in a space where we're just not going to be able to find any peace, right? We're going to just be in this perpetual cycle of pain and struggle and agony and anxiety. And so for me, it's like, how do I change the dynamic of this situation? How do I change that? You know, as we were just taking a break, and this is the beauty of this platform that we have here. You know, I was just kind of looking at a story that CNN had just posted about another Buffalo woman who went out on Christmas Eve telling her daughter she'd be right back, only to find they found her body a few hundred feet from home. And this is the story of Monique Alexander, 52 years old, Black woman who went to the store, even though, you know, this blizzard took place, and her daughter, Casey Macaron, had bad feelings about her mother taking this walk to the store or taking this walk to go someplace to try to get something before the storm really set in, and she never returned home. My heart and prayer goes out to Casey and her family, to the family of Monique Alexander, but there is a lot of upheaval right now, folks. There's a lot of disturbance, and we have to make the decision as we go into 2023, the role that we're going to play in each other's lives, the roles that we're going to play in the community. And I know for me is that, you know, I want to usher in a sense of peace, a sense of peace. That's why you won't see certain stories on this platform, folks. No, you know, I'm not here to get you upset all the time, to keep you in a state of rage and anger and hatred. You know, we can talk about certain things, and then some stories we won't cover, because at the end of the day, we don't want to put your mind or add more to your mind and just for ratings or just for likes or just for views. We want for you to understand and know that there are things going on, but at the end of the day, we want you to walk away with a sense of peace. Let me hear from you. Let me take a look at, let me check in with Marcina. Marcina, you said, I learned that Black people, Black women are powerful beyond measure. And we have great people, great leaders like Vice President Harris and Stacey Abrams. Absolutely. That's a great lesson to learn this year. Great lesson to learn. This, they have said, Marcina, and I know that, you know, a lot of folks have said it, that this is the year of the woman. This will continue to be the year of the woman. I think in 2023, we're going to see more Black women doing more phenomenal things. And you know what? I love and appreciate what Black women are saying. More and more of you sisters are saying, look, stop calling us strong. Stop saying that we're resilient, as if we can't be vulnerable, as if we can't be tired, as if we can't be human. It's either we are looked at in one form, you know, just as from a sexual perspective, or we're looked at as a superpower or a superwoman, and that we can't fall somewhere in the middle, that we can't exhibit some level of humanity in our existence. And I agree with you, Marcina. I'm with you. I'm looking forward to seeing the great works that Black women across this country continue to do, continue to push the boundaries, continue to break this glass ceilings, bust through the doors, continue to create, continue to dominate, continue to do the great things that y'all do, and just continuing to be you. Just continuing to be you. Trust and believe we are going to be the space where Black women can do that. So, Marcina, thank you so much. Lana, you checked in. You said, I learned the culture is a dope Black show discussing Black issues and is an excellent journalistic voice for Black people. Share these platforms with your family and friends. Thank you, Lana. Thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the undying support. You've been riding with us from the very beginning, and we can't appreciate you more. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Willie, you said we once again saved America for another 2 years. Woo! That's a good one. Hey, Willie, that is a good one, bro. We did save America. Question is, though, will America come to our defense? Because as much as we're doing the saving, right, I don't think that Black folks need to be saved in the classic sense. But guess what? You owe us, America. You owe us for the fact that we are continuing to be not just participants in the democratic system. We are the pillar of democracy in this country. You cannot have democracy without Black America. You cannot have you can't talk about having the moral authority without Black America. You cannot have a political consciousness or political conscience, excuse me, without Black America. So we're saving a country, but in 2023, will this country be there to not to save us, but to help take our struggle to the next level, to take us from a place where we're struggling to a place to where we're prospering. So great, great lesson. Thank you for sharing that, Brother Willie. Good to see you. Lana, Willie, and Marcina, I hope y'all have a fantastic transition into the new year. Sandy, you checked in and said, I've learned I cannot continue to pour into someone else's cup at the detriment of my own. Lord. I'm telling you. Look, I'm telling you. I love to put out. I love to share. I love to give, right? But I think for all of us, and I feel like, Sandy, this might be for our personal relationships more than our professional ones, right? Like, I love the fact that you're right. I'm not pouring more into you and you ain't returning the favor. And this is not being selfish, folks. This is talking about having mutually beneficial relationships with people that lifts us. No more of this, I'm giving more and you giving me less. No. I think all of us needed that word today, Sandy. So you are right on point. Black folks in this country, we give. We give so much of ourselves to this country. We give so much ourselves to the political system, to the economic system, to the social. We sacrifice ourselves. We put ourselves on the altar only to be what? Used and abused. And then they say, well, can you give a little bit more? We give our minds, our hearts, our spirits, our talents, and our skills. In some cases, we give up our future, i.e. our children. And then they say, can you give more? No, we're not giving no more. We ain't giving no more. I'm not pouring in more into your cup than you pouring into me. If you got a quarter, if you got a little bit in your cup, guess what's not going to happen? Not going to happen. I can't do it. And we shouldn't be, there's got to be a boundary on that. There's got to be a boundary. Sandra, you brought up a whole great point. I'm telling you, that's a whole word right there. Thank you so much. Pandora Box, you said words are very powerful. They can make you great or break you to pieces. Woo! That's why I love and appreciate each and every one of y'all from the Online Culture Crew, because that is it right there. Look, if nothing else this year, folks, if we don't recognize the power of words, here on this platform, I got the great opportunity, the great blessing to say, to be before you in this space. I have to keep that in mind every single day that I stand before you. Every time I make a post, I always have to say, my words can go further along than me physically. So I need to be cautious. And I think for all of us, we should be cautious about the words that we use, the meanings that we give, and more importantly, how we communicate to one another, because it makes all the difference in the world. It makes all of the difference. You can create enemies or you can create friends just by simply the words that you use. And so I truly, truly appreciate you, Pandora Box, for mentioning that. We got one more. We got 30 seconds. Ricky Murray, you said the black man in America is a 7-foot tall man drowning in 4 feet of water. All he has to do is stand up. Damn. There it is right there, Ricky. There it is. Black man. Look, we can't just say black man now. We gotta include our women, black man and black women. All we got to do is stand up. This country is showing us, and this is a great point to end out, this country is showing us that it's not able to meet all of our needs, and not able to meet our expectations, and cannot fulfill all of our interests. All we got to do is stand up and do something for ourselves at this point. We can't keep relying on a situation, on a system, on anybody that's not going to be there for us. So all we got to do, Ricky, as you said, brother, is stand up. Look, that's going to do it for me. But I hope and pray, I really hope and pray that each one of us is able to make the peaceful transition into the new year. I know it's a lot of, sometimes this is something that I've been taught, and I'm going to say this very quickly. We always been taught to kind of come into the new year or to take out 1 year and go into the new year in a bang. I encourage us to try something different, that we go into the new year in a state of peace and reflection, that we go into the new year in a state of prayer. We go into the new year in a state of solemn hopefulness, right? Being hopeful, but at the same time, we go into the new year being quiet. Being quiet. We reflect on all of the great principles of Kwanzaa this week. We reflect on all that has happened because we need to be of sober mind, sober body. Our spirits need to be still. We need to be in the right mind state. We need to be in the right headspace to handle whatever may be coming down the pike for us in 2023. We need to be sober minded so that way we can understand what's coming down to us. And more importantly, we can know what road we need to take, what role we need to play, and most importantly, how it can all benefit us and our culture. Man, oh man, I thank each and every one of you for a fantastic year here on the Culture on the Black Star Network. Make sure y'all continue to support us. We are doing the great work. We are trying to continue to have these conversations. My sister Lana always say, this is Black news. We need you to support Black news. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you support us financially, share the content, download the app, and continue to support us. Also follow us on social media platforms on IG and Twitter and Facebook, Black Star Network, and just continue to show your love and stand up for Black media. Also, while you're online, make sure you follow me, yours truly, Farajii Muhammad, at The Real Farajii on IG, Farajii on Twitter. And God willing, folks, God willing, that we get through this transition into the new year in a better space, in a peaceful space, in a space that's good for us and our families. And God willing, we'll reconnect with each other on Tuesday, folks, of next week for another exciting edition and the first show of the Culture of 2023. Thank you to my team, King Keenan, Ariel, Joe, my control room. Thank you. Stay tuned. Up next is RMU, Bull and Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll reconnect in the new year of 2023 here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. Happy New Year. Thank you for tuning in.